All right, in this video, we're just going to talk about the ideas in esoteric philosophy of transmuting a square into a globe. Now, obviously, this brings up the ideas that are going on in the whole flat Earth versus globe Earth debate, and I'm just staying away from that, not giving any opinion on it. I don't care what you think about it, but I'm just pointing out that there's esoteric underpinnings behind this idea for whatever reason that is. So this is taken from my occult science series, but I feel like it will lay a good foundation, where Albert Pike talks about in Morals and Dogma about the last lesson of Freemasonry. And this is also the first lesson where he talks about the compass and the square at the beginning of the book, but he's going to pull off a little alpha and omega motif and give us more insight into the last lesson on the compass and the square and what it means in Freemasonry, or at least Scottish Rite Freemasonry. So first off, on the left side, just go through the bold letters if you really want to just get a synopsis. The compass is a symbol of the heavens, spiritual and intellectual moral portion of man. The square is a symbol of the earth and the material, sensual, and baser portion. So there you go. The square is profane, the compass is divine. And he says the square is an instrument for plane surfaces only and geometry. So geometry like geocentric, right? Earth-centered. That would have to do with this plane. And he says measuring the earth through this geometry and plane geometry appears to be and was by the ancients supposed to be a plane. So he's saying that the ancients and what the world appears to be, if you just use your five senses, it appears to be a plane, like a flat earth, a plane. So that is what the square represents. Esoterically, a flat earth, and a flat earth is a profane plane earth, right? So everything that has to do with the Saturnian lead, the demiurge, the dualistic creator god, anything of the earthly nature, anything centered around earth, the earthly ego, right? That is all profane and exoteric in esoteric philosophy, and they can all be amalgamated into one symbol, the square. So he says the square is a symbol of earth and all the things that belong to it. So we just read what those things were. Now the compass, he says, is for spheres and spherical surfaces and spherical trigonometry. So trig, like three, like a trinity, right? We talked about all the trinity stuff going on with Daily Plaza, and you're trying to rebirth the divine spark through the Great Mother by shedding the lower nature into the higher nature. So that's the whole point of the idea of the moon landing, where the lower nature was JFK, and the Marilyn Monroe affair was like the poisoning or the deepest degradation of that. And then it was purged or purified in an alchemical ritual, and he was resurrected where the divine spark was released of the eternal flame, symbolically, of course. And, the idea of the spirit of the eternal flame is the spirit of JFK, and what was his initial initiation to the masses of the moon, going to the moon, right? So that was realized through the Apollo 11 moon landing, or allegedly, and that was the higher nature of the Osiris male force going up to unify with the pure virgin or trinity of the virgin moon, which man had never touched. That's kind of the whole essence of all of this. So you can see it expressed through the compass here with the trigonometry, the trinity, and the sphere, right? The divine sphere, illuminated by the sun. So he says this is of the heavens and of the orbits, right? Orbs, circular motion, things like that. And the compass, he says, is appropriate symbol of the heavens and of all things celestial and the celestial nature of man, essentially. So there you go. All the cool, awesome, one unity esoteric shit is of the spherical nature of the compass, and all of the profane separateness of the demiurge and the illusion of the false ego is of the square, according to esoteric Freemasonry and philosophy. So we go on to Manly Palmer Hall and just cruise through some of his writings from the Secret Teachings. He talks about Ein Sof, which is essentially the spirit of deity, the androgynous spirit of Ein Sof. We talked about this in the Occult Science series quite a bit. He says there was a circular shape given to it. It's like a globe. the globe symbolic of Ein Sof. So a globe earth, just symbolically again, is symbolic of the deity of the occult, the Ein Sof. This is the spiritual essence that's outside of the tree of life. The tree of life is like the manifestation, physical manifestation, the world that we are, cognizant of. Granted, it does go up into higher levels of consciousness. The point is the Ein Sof is kind of like outside of that. And there's this idea of this cosmic egg that contains all within it. And this spirit hops into this egg and bursts it. And the infinite deity revealed itself through the universe. And that's very similar to the Big Bang Theory. Again, all things we talked about in the Occult Science series. So this globe of Ein Sof has something to do with this auric egg and this sphere of the entity called man. This has to do with the central point at the beginning, or the middle point of like the sun glyph in astrology. That's the center point, and it manifests infinite points on a sphere from the center. It just represents the supreme deity. So an illuminated spherical divine earth is representative of the supreme Ein Sof in Kabbalah. So if we go over to Crowley and talk about the Ein Sof, it has to do with Lucifer and the holy guardian angel. And he talks about that right here. The solar phallic hermetic Lucifer is his, meaning Crowley's, own guardian angel. And he talks about how the idea of Lucifer in the garden gnosis made gods of our race, knowing good and evil, whereas we know it as separate, but the gnosis is that it all comes from the same unity. Unifying the opposites into equilibrium is the formula. And he says that lower, that the angel, having eaten of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, becomes wise in the duality to apprehend the formula of equilibrium. So this duality teaches the formula of unifying the opposites, and that's pretty much what alchemy is, and that's why he talks about it represents Baphomet. And I think it's very interesting that he says he identifies his holy guardian angel with Ein Sof, so essentially a spherical identification, if we just go by what we just read with Manly Palmer Hall. And he talks about how the perfected Osiris is the Hierophant, so that's like the Apollo 11 viewing the spherical earth, right? If the Ein Sof is spherical and you get to see it, you get to be one with it, that is what the illumination was of the Apollo 11 mission, right? And he brings the candidate, the natural Osiris, that's the lower one, right? The JFK Osiris, to identify with himself. So that's like Crowley's like, my lower nature is this lower Osiris, but the whole point of the angel making himself perfect is to unite with this unity of the Ein Sof. So the unity consciousness of the Apollo 11 mission, seeing the earth as one, and Carl Sagan's, all of his speeches about that was the gift of Apollo, viewing the earth as one, all this oneness, yay. That's the oneness of the sphere or the globe of Ein Sof in Kabbalah. This is all synonymous with that. So take that for what you will. Just saying that there are absolutely esoteric parallels to all of this stuff. So next, this was all just from the Mysterium Conjunctionis book of Alchemy by Carl Jung. This is all sourced from that. This is something we went over already in the Jung writings, but I'm just going to review. It's the idea of the virgin moon being associated with the king and his son, like JFK Jr. being born again on his third birthday, on the third day after the resurrection, right, of Osiris or JFK. And he dies and is buried in the church or on consecrated ground, so that happened at the funeral, and he waits his resurrection. And so this mother is there for the changing of the old king, which again, the old king is Saturn, the demiurge, Jehovah, the earth, nature, the geocentric creator god, right? That's pretty much what it is. And then through the transformation of the moon, the king gets immortality in a divine incorruptible body. So this idea of the divine incorruptible body in the moon, this is all synonymous with this. So that's what I bring back to the idea of uniting the divine Osiris Apollo 11 rocket with the virgin moon luminary that man has never touched, right? So this is what I think is very interesting. This is the source reading that we haven't done yet on the right side. This is from Ripley's Cantilena. Cantilena, George Ripley, he's one of the most famous alchemists. So going back here, the alchemists say that in this literature and this ancient poetry and whatnot, this is where the divine secrets of alchemy are. So we're reading this poetry from Ripley to reveal the secrets of the mysteries, right? So it's talking about the child being conceived and reborn out of the womb, just like Pan and the Night of Pan being reborn out of the womb of Babylon or whatever, Crowley's crazy Pan shit. And then he resumes a kingly state, and this is heaven's fate, the fate of the divine, right? To reunite with the oneness. That's the point of all this esoteric philosophy. And so the mother's bed, which was a square, so if the mother's bed, the bed of the mother is Earth, right? Mother Earth was a square, so that would be like a flat Earth, is shortly made orbicular or spherical or globe-shaped or round with the moon's luster. So the luster of the moon, like the Apollo 11 moon mission, reveals the spherical nature that is transmuted from the lower square, right? This is all in this literature here. And so Carl Jung talks about in this that this is the idea of the squaring in the circle, and anything angular is imperfect and has to be superseded or replaced by the perfect, here represented by the circle. So again, plane, flat, angular geometry is imperfect and has to be replaced by a perfect circle, sphere, right? So he says the production of the round and perfect means that the son issuing from the mother has attained perfection. The king has attained eternal youth and his body has become incorruptible. So that's the whole point of the Apollo 11 mission. That's the eternal spirit of Apollo realized through the higher Osiris coming from the lower Osiris, or JFK, saying we choose to go to the moon, right? So as the square represents the hostile quaternio of hostile elements, that's like Earth and its 4 elements, the circle indicates the reduction to unity. So we talked about this. The obelisk, the point at the top is like the quintessence pointing up to the heavens, but it comes from the base of the 4, which is the square. So that's the 4 elements all unified into one unity of quintessence. So if we move on, read more about this. The poem continues and it says, "Thus from a square, the bed a globe is made." So again, you're making a globe from the square. So that's the whole point of what we talked about with Freemasonry. A flat, profane plane, you're transmuting that into a divine globe or sphere, right? Spherical trigonometry. And he says that the purest white, and this is the albedo part of alchemy, comes from the blackest shade. That's the negredo and all the stuff we went over with the, JFK's death, transmuting his head, the Isis mourning motif. Well, all of the pure whiteness that came out of that was the Apollo 11 moon mission, right? Out of JFK's initiation, the idea of going to the moon. And he says, from this, that's the scepter of the king that is joyful. So that's the joy of the adepts, right, that Crowley talked about, is doing this part in the alchemy. So transforming a profane doctrine or a profane JFK or whatever was profane about him to the occultists, or at least as what we were given in the mass consciousness or media projections, well, that was transmuted into a pure whiteness. And so Carl Jung says here that basically in this idea of the pure whiteness of the moon coming together in this illumination, all the opposites are fused together. So again, all of this is fused into one in the Apollo 11 mission, where we see the world as one, all this oneness, yay, oneness, whatever. And then so further on in the poem, it talks about this unlocks the gates of paradise. Remember, we talked about Dallas and the Hebrew letter Dalet being the gateway or the door to the Garden of Eden in Kabbalah, but Dealey Plaza is the gateway to Dallas. That's just what they called it. So it's pretty weird how this is where a lot of this started, and the Negredo is the starting point of the alchemy. So it started with this dark, plunge into darkness of the JFK assassination to bring about this alchemy, right? The gates of paradise. And so raising like Luna, like the moon, to the heavens, crowning this sun with glory. So raising the sun like the moon, like up to the heavens where the moon is, and the glory, this is all synonymous with this alchemical teaching. And he says here that Ripley says the renewal of the king is the son manifests as a new redeemer. So we have the JFK Jr.'s son on the funeral, his third birthday and the third day. And then we have the Apollo 11 son, the higher nature, going up to the moon. And he says that the sublimation of Luna to the imperial place is an unmistakable paraphrase on the one hand of the assumption of the virgin and the marriage of the bride in the church. So there we go. The king marrying the moon, or the virgin bride, the virgin moon, with the Apollo king unifying with it. We talked all about the astrology of the Apollo 11 moon launch of the union of the sun and the moon, with the moon in Leo, the sun sign, and the sun in Cancer, the moon sign. All of that was going on. And this is unlocking the paradise of God's kingdom on earth through this alchemical ritual. And I guess that's what the occultists viewed this as. It only goes to reason. And it says that the sun and the moon make the king's son into the re-arisen primordial man who is the cosmos. So what did the moon landing do? It got everyone focused on the cosmos, on space, right? That's what the primordial man is, the cosmos. And this is what all the transhumanism stuff is based off of, is, the idea of transforming the consciousness into technology that's based on the cosmos. I mean, whenever you go to any of this transhumanist stuff, they always have pictures of the stars and the cosmos in the background. They always use that as this motif to get people psyched up for it. And they always use the Apollo 11 moon mission as this great achievement that led to the technology that is allowing the ideas of transhumanism to happen. So this all ties back to the occult science series. Remember that Carl Jung said that the house of the sphere, whose roundness represents the cosmos, there you go again, the oneness of the cosmos, is at the same time the world soul. And so the world soul, we know, is the chariot. And so if the world soul is profane and the chariot represents that, then that has to be killed and resurrected, and the lead has to go away. And that's the whole point of the JFK assassination and the Dealey Plaza chariot, to birth the higher chariot world soul through the Apollo 11 rocket. And again, this is all the idea of consciousness. What does the Apollo 11 mission represent to the world at large if you believe the official story of it? This great grand achievement for mankind, this oneness with the cosmos, space, and the world, right? This is all consistent esoterically. So it says the king is destined for rotundity or wholeness, right? That's the high priestess virgin. That's the earthly nature being purged and brought to perfection, combined with the higher nature. And that's the whole point of the king and his transformation. So I'd say that pretty much encapsulates all of the esoteric stuff going on with the idea of changing a profane flat doctrine or a profane flat king like JFK into a higher divine king of the Apollo 11 rocket obelisk shooting up to space. And instead of a square base for this rocket obelisk, there's a circular one, which the flame comes out. So I think that's pretty interesting. A lot of weird stuff going on. And we have the black and white unified into the single pillar, the male phallic force shooting up to impregnate the great mother, to kill the lower ego and birth the higher unity consciousness ego that is the Ein Sof globe of the mysteries.